Ontarians produce almost 1 ton of garbage per person per year. In Ontario, 50% of all residential waste ends up in landfills, and 83% of all business waste ends up in landfills. Overall, 70% of our waste is ending up in landfills, even if it could have been recycled or composted. Townsville Consulting has been brought on board by the Government of Ontario to provide a recommendation regarding whether or not a ban on single-use plastics should be implemented. Single-use plastic is, as it sounds, a plastic product that's intended to be used only once before being disposed of. For example, plastic straws, grocery bags, plastic cutlery, takeout containers, or other food packaging. When we're considering this, there's two problems that are related. Firstly, as I already said, there's too much waste that is ending up in the landfills that is not being diverted. Secondly, for plastics specifically, while we have too much waste ending up in landfills, we have too much plastic that is not ending up in landfills or even recycling plants and is therefore becoming litter and pollution. The Great Lakes are polluted by 10,000 tons of plastic waste every year. 80% of all the litter that's found on the shores of the Great Lakes is plastics. And of this marine plastic pollution, up to 95% is single-use plastics. So something that most people are probably familiar with is the fact that plastics take many years, even centuries, to break down. And even at that, they never truly degrade. Over time, they will break down into smaller pieces called microplastics. And during this process, they release toxins. And these toxins are released into the water systems, the soil, wherever plastic may be. So all of these statistics make it seem like the way forward is clear. A ban on single-use plastics is an obvious, immediate solution, isn't it? Unfortunately, no. One of the first problems with implementing a ban on a provincial level is that alternatives are not equally available across Ontario. So some northern municipalities, such as Thunder Bay, don't have cost-effective alternatives to single-use plastics currently available in their supply chain. Secondly, alternatives that do exist for other areas might not actually be much better than the current options. So last year, the Danish Ministry of Environment and Food conducted a study on all aspects of the life cycle of various types of reusable bags, including the production, distribution, disposal, etc., and their impacts on various environmental factors, such as resource depletion, climate change, and many other factors. What they found was that a paper bag would need to be reused 43 times, and a non-organic cotton bag would need to be reused 7,100 times for the total environmental impact to be equal to that of a traditional single-use plastic bag. If the alternatives available for some of the most commonly used single-use plastics are not going to be an overall benefit to the environment, then we should not act too quickly to implement a ban, which would just cause an increased cost for manufacturers and consumers without the evidence to show that would make a real impact on the environment. There's also other international studies, such as an Irish study that showed that when retailers started charging for single-use plastic grocery bags, their usage did decrease, but sales for small garbage bags also rose quite significantly. So therefore, we can't currently guarantee that any sort of ban would actually decrease usage of plastic overall or be an overall benefit to the environment when we look at the big picture. Using too much plastic is definitely part of the problem, but a bigger problem is that we're not effectively managing them at the end of their life. So we would offer some suggestions to make a positive environmental impact without implementing a ban. So we could encourage manufacturers to use more widely recyclable materials to at least ensure that all plastics are recyclable. We can also encourage retailers to voluntarily phase out single-use plastics. This is already gaining popularity internationally. Additionally, the Government of Ontario could allow or even encourage municipalities to implement local bans. So the benefit of this is that the population and availability and accessibility, etc., vary so greatly across Ontario. So individual municipalities would be better able to implement an action that would be accessible and sustainable for that particular area. So Townsville Consulting does not recommend a ban on single-use plastics at the provincial level, but we will recommend two actions for the Government of Ontario that should be taken immediately. Firstly, we should implement a public education campaign to remind residents of proper recycling and waste management methods, an effort to increase diversion away from landfills. Second, we should be implementing methods to improve waste management and collection of plastics to try and reduce the amount of plastic that's ending up as litter or pollution. A simple way of doing this would be to simply increase the number of garbage cans that are available in convenient public areas. Ontario has long been a leader in sustainability efforts, as we were the birthplace of the Curbside Recycling Box program in Kitchener in 1981, which is now an internationally replicated program. It's essential that Ontario continues to lead by example in the management of waste and plastics. While a ban is not the answer right now, we must continue to take action to be leaders in sustainability.